Okay, so now let's talk about the PGP. Let's see. This is like a PGP history. There's a guy called the Zimmerman, right? He created the PGP. He proposed one solution to counter the U.S. and the government's the trend to outlaw the cryptography and encroach on individual privacy. So to make the cryptography harder to criminalize and etc. So basically, he does not want to trust the central authority, right? Just like the Bitcoin, right? Uh, basically, his main idea is the Zimmerman approach to the digital certificate administration with this web of trust. So for him, this is a keyword, web of trust, right? He basically wants to build something called web of trust, right? Without the central authority, okay? So in our case, central authority means the, certificate authority is such as the VeriSign, right? You know that X509, right? If X509 to work, we need what? The central authority, right? Or the trust third party, like what? Like VeriSign, right? But PGP, really, we don't need the certificate authority, okay, to build this trust, web of trust. Okay, so basically that's the main idea, okay? So web of trust is a keyword that you have to remember. And he tried to build this trust without the certificate authority, CA. Okay, so that's like this is like the main goal of PGP. Okay, now let's take a look at this diagram, right? You know what? Let's just download this. Okay, good. So this is okay now. So we have a PGP, right? So this is X509, and then this is PGP, right? So the PGP is, it's a certificate. So this is the X509 certificates, and this is what? This is the PGP, right? So let me just explain. Okay, so now we learned about X509 digital certificate, right? Oops. The certificate looks like what? Right? So let's see. This is like X509. We learned that it's there's a subject, right? And then the public key, of course there's a binding, right? And then there's what? There's a signature, right? The signature, the issuer's signature. So a good example of the issuer is what? The VeriSign, right? So this is like a VeriSign's signature. So this is a typical, right? But if you look at the PGP certificates, a little bit different. Okay? So if you look at the PGP, and by the way, typically, and another thing is 99% of the time, the subject, right? And then issuer is not same, right? So for example, subject is Alice, and this is Alice public key, and this is what? Signed by VeriSign. This is signature by the VeriSign, right? So usually subject Alice and issuer the VeriSign, they are different. And what is another the characteristic of this X509 digital certificate? What is it? There's only one signature, right? There's only one signature. But if you look at the PGP, what is really interesting about the PGP certificates is that the issuer is the same as the subject. Okay? And if you look at the signature, right, there is at least one or more signature. It could be multiple, but at least one. Okay? So you see that there is difference, right? The PGP certificates, or this is the X509 certificates. And by the way, when we say digital certificates, I mean, 99% of the time we are really like, people are referring to this X509 digital certificate. So people don't usually use the word X509. So they just say digital certificate, right? But 99% of the time, when we say a digital certificate, it really means X509 digital certificates. Okay, but anyway, so this is a PGP, right? So there's a big difference. The first difference is what? The subject and typically, the subject and issuer is, there are two different entities, right? And for the PGP certificates, issuer and the subject, they are same entity. And as you can see, multiple signatures, at least more than one. Okay? So any question? And then
yes, I do.
Yes.
I do have a question.
Yes.
So it's not clear to me what advantage exactly does this offer over just a regular X509
You know what?
certificate?
You know what? Actually, that's a really good, excellent question. Okay, so could you please wait like about 5 to 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Then I'll get to that point. But that's a very good question. Okay? Yes, so please give me about 10 minutes. I'll get to that point. Well, thank you. Thanks for the good question. Okay. Now,
I have a question also. Is
yes.
this also only for emails?
No, actually, it's not really for. I mean, I know that a lot of people use this for email, but not just for email. There's many applications. I mean, yes, you will know. It's not the common application. Yes, somehow they're using this for emails, but does not have to be, for emails. So you will see why. Okay, now, and there's another. Okay, so but if you have in X509, right? There's some certificate called root certificates, right? So in the root certificates, and I'm talking about X509, yes, in this case is what? Issuer, right? Issuer is by the way, this is the signature by the CA, this is like a CA's signature, right? And then, hold on. So for example, I'll show you the, no, actually it's not the root certificates. Sorry. So this is the example, okay? So let's say this is Alice, right? And then this is what? Alice public key, right? And then this is what? This is the signed by Alice, for example. So this is what, as you can see, this is self-signed. Or, this is, by the way, just I'm showing the example. Or this can be signed by whom? This can be signed by Bob. Or you know what? This can be signed by Kathy, etc. Okay? So you know that, but this has to be this self-signed, right? This Alice. Okay. So this is like an example. Okay. But whereas if you look at this X509 digital certificates, right? So let's say here is Alice, and this is what? Alice public key, right? And then in this case, who is the issuer? Issuer is a certificate authority, and this is public key. So this is the, so in this case, there's a one-to-one corresponding, there is a one-to-one correspondence. So the issuer is, in this case, a certificate authority. In this case, issuer is Alice, right? And there's a public key, Alice public key, right? And then this is what? This is a signature. But to be precise, right? this is what the signers of the digital certificates, right? So basically, you know, in this case, the signer is the certificate authority. In this case, is multiple, you know, entities, including Alice. Okay. So by the way, here's a subject, and this is an issuer, and this is the digital the signers. This is a signer. So in this case, the certificate authority. In this case, Alice, Bob, Kathy. Okay. So this is like one example. Okay. Now, so this is, I'm just introducing the PGP certificate, right? So how it looks like, but I didn't really explain the purpose, right? Okay, now let's just keep going. Almost all X509 certificate have the, you know, separate issuer and the subject, right? I mean, except the root certificates, right? Okay, now so the PGP does not use the CA concept, certificate authority concept. Instead, each user signs his or her own digital certificate. Issuer and the subject are identical. Okay, now, so this, starting from the step number 2, it shows how to build a trust network. Okay, so now, so let's look at this figure. The Bob. So here's the Alice, and here's the Bob, right? As shown in the figure 2, Bob, here's the Bob, wants to get the genuine Alice public key, right? So Alice sends the self-signed certificate to Bob. Bob calls Alice to confirm that he received Alice's correct public key. And then Bob basically, you know, calls Alice and saying that I got your public key, and its fingerprints is 554360F3, right? So Bob asked that questions over the phone, and Alice said, what? You are correct. Okay? So that Bob now signs Alice's digital certificates, right? Oh, okay. So basically that's the first step. So now, as you can see, the Alice has now, you know, this Alice and Bob, they build a very simple trust network. Okay, so I'll show you this example. Okay. Okay, so this is like step number 1. So this is all about building the trusting network without the central authority. Building a trust network. Right? Step number 2. So now, so this is the web of trust, right? And this time they're trying to build this trust network, right? And then in this trust network, there is what? There is Alice and then Bob. And later on, we'll add Kathy, and then we'll add David, and we'll add, you know, everyone, right? But in the first step, we'll only add, at this point, there will be only Alice and Bob in this trust network, okay? So that's step number 1. So now I'm going to explain. Here is the Alice, right? Here's Alice. And then Alice, this is like first step. Step number 1, Alice has to build what? Create the self-signed certificates. So here's the PGP certificates, right? And then here is the Alice, right? And then here is Alice public key. And then who signs this? Alice, right? Alice, so this is Alice self-signed certificates. Right? And then here's the Bob. Okay, so what is the Bob's main goal? The main goal of the Bob is to get what? The genuine genuine Alice public key, right? Without central authority, without the trusted third party. So what Alice is, what the Bob actually is going to do is, so by the way, here's some telephone, right? There's some cell phone, okay? So so the first Alice sends this digital certificates to whom? To Bob. Okay. And then, but the problem is Bob has to verify that this is what? This is true, the Alice public key, right? So what Bob is going to do is, Bob is going to use this cell phone. By the way, this is just example. This is an analogy. I'm using the cell phone as an analogy, but there's many different software and there's many different application tools, right? But I'm just using the cell phone as the as an analogy, right, to make this example easy to understand. So the Bob using the cell phone to call Alice, okay? And you know what the thing is, since the Bob and so here's the assumption: the Bob and Alice, they are friends, they trust each other, okay? So when the Bob calls Alice, and so you know that it's Bob can recognize the Alice, the voice, right? I mean, they are friends, right? So basically Bob said, by the way, I got your self-signed certificates, right? And then I'm looking at this your public key right now, right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hash this public key. Okay, I'm hashing this. So by the way, this is Alice public key, right? And then I got your fingerprints or the hash value, which is 5543, 60 F3 and blah 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 blah. Okay. So Bob's saying that, by the way, Alice, is this your fingerprints? Is this correct? And Alice said yes. She said that's correct, right? So that means authentication process has been done through this phone, right? So now Bob knows what? Bob knows that this is what? This is Alice, a genuine public key. Okay? So any questions up to this point? Okay, so then the next step, right? The next step is that once Bob find out that this is Alice genuine public key, what Bob is going to do is basically he has Alice, so here is the Alice, right? And then here's Alice public key, right? And then you know that there's a Alice signature, right? And then what? He's going to sign his add his signature in this to this certificates, right? Now you see that what? As you can see, now you see that what? You have Alice and Alice public key, right? And then you see that there's a two signature, right? Alice and Bob, right? So any question? Okay, so at this point, thanks to this, the web of trust is created. Of course, in this web of trust, there's only two individuals, Alice and Bob. Okay, now let me just review the digital certificate a little bit, right? Remember the digital certificates? We have, okay, in X509, right? We have a message M, and this message is what? There's Alice and Alice public key, and then some period, and I'll just let's not, so expiration date or whatever. But what is really important thing is here is Alice and this is Alice public key, right? And then signer, like a very sign, right? It hashes it, right? And then signs by very sign, right? So basically this whole thing is a digital certificate, right? Message M. So basically, you know what? Digital certificates, DS, is M, comma, H of M, and then very sign, right? This is what we learned. But in this case, what do we have? If you use the notations, we have a message M, but in this message is what? The subject is what? Subject is Alice, and here's Alice public key. Right, so that's the message, right? And then for the self-sign, so this signature, right, really means this H of M is signed by whom? Alice. Right? So this is self-signed. And then if you look at this one, this H of M, hash of M, by the way, M is subject is Alice and this is Alice public key, right? So that's M. And then this is signed by whom? Bob. Right? So in this case, remember the digital certificate in the previous case is the message M and H of M signed by VeriSign or the issuer. This is issuer, right? In this case, issuer is, there are two issuers, Alice and Bob, but they are not VeriSign, right? They are not certificate authority, right? So for in this case, this digital certificate, we can express as M, right? And then what? M, and then H of M, Alice, and then H of M, Bob, right? So basically, this is this one, and this guy is this one. And the message M is really like here's subject Alice, and this is Alice public key. Subject is Alice and Alice public key. Yellow, green. So any question? So now you see that there's a clear difference between the PGP certificates, right? And then X509 certificate. First of all, you know that it's typically in X509 certificate there's only one issuer, but as you can see there's a multiple issuer, right? Multiple issuer, and then this subject, and one of, if you look at the one of the signature, right, the subject, and then okay, so let me use the red, the subject, and then the issuer, right, is identical. So any question? Okay, so you know what? Okay, so then I'll just give me 1 minute. Then, so the next, I'm gonna talk about this next time, but I think you probably already have an idea. So now, as you can see, the Alice and now Bob, they build a trust network, right? And then Bob, now the next step is Bob is going to basically, build a trust network with a Kathy. You see that Kathy? So they're gonna build a trust network. And then the final step is what? Now there's a David. So the David, through the same process. So now they are building a trust network. And in this trust network, there are four entities: Alice, Bob, Kathy, and David. So they can build this trust network without central authority, like VeriSign. Okay, so that's the major idea of the PGP, but I'm gonna finish the rest of the step next time. Thank you.